Welcome to the video solutions for the NOCN Functional Skills English Level 2 Writing Sample Paper 1. In this video we will go through the questions and you can get a better idea of what you want your answers to look like, as well as what to look out for when planning your answers. Before we take a look at the questions, let's have a look at the marking criteria and see what you will be assessed on. So you'll be assessed based on your spelling, punctuation and grammar, which means that you need to have correct punctuation, including correct use of commas, apostrophes and quotation marks. You'll also need to make sure your grammar is correct, so everything makes sense in your answer and your meaning is clear. All of your nouns and verbs agree with each other, and we'll take a look at how that works within the answers. We also need to be spelling words correctly. So words that are used in daily life and a range of specialist words that focus on the topic that has been specified in the question. As well as spelling, punctuation and grammar, we need to be focusing on how our writing is composed. So we need to be communicating information and ideas and opinions clearly, coherently and effectively. What does this mean? Well, information includes facts, and then our ideas and opinions are thoughts and feelings about a topic and our suggestions. We need to be communicating all of this clearly, so it's easy for the reader to understand. It needs to be coherent and effective. So make sure that you're using different language techniques and you're thinking about how you can convey information correctly and effectively. We need to write an appropriate level of detail and to an appropriate length. So if there is any word count, we need to be meeting that, and we need to make sure that we are fully answering the question with appropriate details. We also need to organise our writing using an appropriate format and structure. So depending on the text type, we need to be including the right kinds of formatting features that are required. We also need to try to use paragraphs in all of our answers, and we can include things like bullet points and tables if they are necessary. We need to be conveying clear meaning and establishing cohesion using organisational markers effectively. Now this means that our text needs to be structured in a way that makes it all make sense and link together and be cohesive. So organising our writing to make it really clear. We need to use different language and register, such as persuasive techniques, when we are writing for different audiences and purposes. So we need to decide how formal our writing needs to be before we start writing, and we need to think about the kind of style and tone we want to convey, what kind of language we need to use. And finally, we need to construct complex sentences consistently and accurately. So that means that we need to think about how to add detail to our sentences and include things like connectives and punctuation to make some longer sentences with multiple ideas contained within them. So now that you know how you will be marked during the exam, let's take a look at some questions and model answers to show you what you need to do. Task 1. Welcome to our Community Awards. The awards. Our annual awards are a celebration of the unsung heroes and heroines, a chance to showcase those that highlight the spirit of our community and the kind and selfless acts that go on every day. Nominating. Do you or someone you know go above and beyond for the community? Nominating an individual or group who make a difference in our community will give them the recognition they deserve. The event. The Community Awards ceremony will be held at the Guildhall on the 25th of June. Awards will be presented by the Lord Mayor. Write an email to the Community Awards Committee with your nomination of an individual or group who you believe should be rewarded for the contribution they have made to your local community in the previous year. Address your email to comawards@asaro.com. In your email, you could explain why you were writing, identify the individual or group you are nominating for an award, explain why you are nominating them, describe the contribution they have made to the local community, and persuade the committee that your nominee or nominees are deserving of an award. You should include any other details you think might be relevant. So what do we need to do in this question? Well, it's quite a long, lengthy question, and we need to work out what the important parts are. So to start with, let's think about the text type that we've been asked to write. We have been asked to write an email, so we'll have to use appropriate formatting features for an email, and we will have to write addressed to somebody else. Who are we writing for? Well, we're writing to the Community Awards Committee. So we don't have a specific name of someone that we're writing to, so we might use Dear Sir or Madam at the start of our email. We also need to be adapting to that audience, so the committee is quite a professional audience and we're going to want to use some formal language in our answers. What is the purpose that we're writing for? We need to nominate an individual or group. So we're looking for someone that goes above and beyond for the community. So someone that has done something that is inspiring or something that is very helpful to the community. We're looking for unsung heroes and heroines. So make sure that you are persuasively highlighting what they've done for the community and explaining why they should be nominated for the Community Awards, why they should win this. So let's take a look at a model answer to this question. Nomination for the Community Awards. Dear members of the Community Awards Committee, I am writing to nominate Miss Jasmine Leah for the selfless work she has done for our community. Jasmine has contributed the highest number of volunteering hours of any volunteer at the Beeston Animal Shelter, as well as participating in a charity bike ride and raising over £650 to support Saving the Angels, a children's cancer charity based in London. Miss Leah is well known among the vulnerable in her community due to her work as a community health nurse. She is always kind and considerate to her patients, and she deserves recognition for her efforts to care for others. Despite being only 20 years old, Miss Leah has made a huge impact on the lives of those around her, and she is more than deserving of the award. She brings a smile to everyone she meets and adds so much value to the everyday lives of our housebound residents and rescued animals. I hope that you will consider Jasmine among your top nominees. Kind regards, Justin Littlewoods. So now let's go through each of the marking criteria to see what makes this a good answer. We'll start with punctuation. Each sentence in the answer starts with a capital letter and ends with a full stop, and you need to make sure that you are writing clear sentences with capital letters and full stops in your own answers. We also have capital letters for proper nouns. So proper nouns include names of people, organisations and places. So we've got Community Awards Committee, they are an organisation, so they've been capitalised, and we have Jasmine Leah, which is a name, and Beeston, which is a place. So make sure that you're using capital letters whenever they're needed. We've also got commas in this answer to add additional information to sentences and to break up different sentences into clauses. So we've got Jasmine has contributed the highest number of volunteering hours of any volunteer at Beeston Animal Shelter. And then we have a comma before this connective phrase, as well as to add some more information to that sentence. We then have another comma to explain what Saving the Angels is, to add this additional information that it is a cancer charity based in London. So try to use commas in your answer to add some more details to sentences. If you're not sure where to use commas, it's a good idea to try reading your answer out loud, and whenever you take a breath, it's probable that you will need a comma there. We also have an apostrophe that has been used for this possessive here. So we've got children's, and we need that possessive apostrophe because we are talking about a cancer charity that is belonging to the children. So it's for these children, so we need an apostrophe in there. Finally, we have a hyphen. So we've got well known to connect two words together. Well and known have separate meanings, but this hyphen has connected them together to create a singular word with a singular meaning. So try to use punctuation creatively in order to create different effects on the reader, and make sure that you are using capital letters, full stops, commas and apostrophes correctly. Now let's look at spelling and grammar. The grammar in this answer is really strong. We know this because when we've read it through, all of the sentences have made sense. So for example, we've got verb and noun agreement. So we've got the selfless work that she has done for our community. So because we are talking about a she, we say she has done. If we were talking about multiple people, for example, a they, we would say they have done. So we've changed that verb there depending on the person. So make sure that you are using the correct verb depending on the noun that you are using, depending on the subject of your sentences. You also need to make sure that you are spelling correctly throughout your answers. And it's a good idea to try and choose some specialist words and include those as well. So for example, we're talking about volunteering and being a volunteer, and those words have been included and spelled correctly. And we've also got words like vulnerable, supporting the vulnerable in the community. That's another specialist word that is very useful for the topic. So we're talking about someone who's done something heroic, and helping the vulnerable in the community is definitely a heroic thing to do. So try to make sure that your spelling is accurate. Some people do struggle with spelling, but you just need to practice and try your very best to get the marks for spelling. Good spelling, punctuation and grammar will help you to make your answer clear. So all of your writing will need to make sense, and you need to read through it once you've finished to make sure that every sentence is really clear to the reader. It's also a good idea to complete some practice answers and then give them to friends or family to read to see if that they understand as well. Because even if you understand something, it might not be written in a way that's clear to everyone else. You'll also need to consider whether your answers are an appropriate length, and you need to think about what details you are including. So let's take a look and see if we were given a word count for this question. And we haven't been given a word count here. So what do we need to do when we don't have a word count? Well, we need to include enough detail to appropriately answer the whole of the question. Generally, this means that we'll write anywhere between 3 and 5 paragraphs. So try to write at least 3 good paragraphs in your answers. So this answer is using appropriate details because it addresses the whole of the question. So if we take a look at the question, it says that we need to explain the reason for writing, identify who we're nominating, explain why we're nominating them, describe the contribution they have made to the local community, and be persuasive, so persuade the committee that they deserve an award. So do we have an explanation for writing? Well, yes, we do. I am writing to nominate Miss Jasmine Lear. And there we've also identified the individual that we're nominating for the award. Then we have an explanation of why they are being nominated. So she's done a lot of selfless work for the community, and she is well known due to her work as a community health nurse. Then we have a description of the contribution that she's made to the local community. So it's explained that she's been volunteering, she's been working at an animal shelter, and she has been caring for patients. Finally, we have some persuasive language that has been used to show that Jasmine is deserving of this award. So we've got a bit of an explanation of this here to try and persuade the reader. And then finally, we have this line, I hope that you will consider her among your top nominees. So all of these details are really relevant to the question. Make sure that you are using the question carefully. You don't have to use every single bullet point in the question because we are told here that we could do these things, not that we should or that we must. But they are a good guide to ensure that our writing is consistently relevant and tied to the topic appropriately. To add additional details to your answer, if you don't quite have enough written down, then you can add some additional information or you can explain your ideas with reasons. But make sure that any details that you're adding are closely related to the question. It might be helpful for you to plan your answers in advance to make sure that you have enough detailed ideas to write about before you get started. Next, let's think about formatting and organisation. So, when you're thinking about formatting your answer, you will need to consider the text type that you've been asked to write. This will be mentioned in the question, and really helpfully we have a reminder of it here. We're supposed to write an email. So what do we need for an email? Well, we need the address that we're writing to and the email address that we are writing from. So these might be specified in the question, so make sure that you check the question carefully and see if you can spot any email addresses. So this one has been used here. And then you can make up your own address for who the email is from. Then we need a subject line. Now this just gives a brief summary of what the email is going to be about. We then need a polite greeting, so dear members of the Community Awards Committee, and make sure that after your greeting you use a comma there. Finally, we will need to use a polite sign-off, such as kind regards, and then the name of the sender. So make sure that you're using all of these elements whenever you write an email. You could also use other organisational features to show the examiner that you know how to organise your writing effectively. So for example, in this question, we could use a bullet pointed or numbered list to show all of the nominees' achievements. We could make a list of these. You also need to make sure that you're using paragraphs to clearly and logically structure your answer. And your paragraphs need to follow on in an order that makes sense. So in the first paragraph, we have an introduction, what the email is about, you're wanting to nominate someone, says who's being nominated and gives some reasons why. Then in the second paragraph we move on to explain a little bit more about the details of the nursing role that this person has. And then we have a persuasive explanation of why Jasmine deserves the award before a short conclusion with a polite line there and a sign off at the end. So make sure that you are using paragraphs throughout your answers effectively to break up information and make it easier for the reader to understand. Writing your paragraphs in a logical order will help you to achieve cohesion. So cohesion means that you're joining up all of your ideas together so that they all flow on effectively. You also need to make sure that in each paragraph, sentences flow on from one another and they're linked together. So for example, in the first paragraph, we've got, I'm writing to nominate Miss Jasmine Lear for the selfless work she has done for our community. So we've mentioned the person here that we're nominating and mentioned that they've been doing this selfless work. Then we have a further description of this. So we're mentioning Jasmine again in the second sentence and we're describing this selfless work. So those sentences work really well in that order. So Jasmine has contributed the highest number of volunteering hours of any volunteer at Beeston Animal Shelter, as well as participating in a charity bike ride and raising over £650 to support this charity. Let's see how these sentences flow on from each other in the next paragraph. So she's well known among the vulnerable in the community due to her work as a community health nurse. So we've mentioned here that she is a nurse and the vulnerable people in the community know her well. And then we follow on from this to say that she is kind and considerate to her patients. So because she's a nurse, she has these patients and she is trying to care for them. She's got these efforts to care for others. So try to link your sentences together within each paragraph. It can be really helpful for you to use connective words and punctuation to make your sentences more complex and cohesive. So, for example, we've got as well as being used here to add some additional information. So not only has she volunteered at the animal shelter, she's also done this charity bike ride. And then in the second paragraph, we have due to. So that provides a bit of an explanation. She's well known. Why is she well known? Well, this is because she is a community health nurse. We've also got and to join some ideas together. So she's not just kind, she's also considerate. And then we have despite to create a contrast here. So she's only 20 years old. However, she's made this huge impact. And we have another and to add some additional information to the sentence. So think about how you can use connective words and commas and punctuation to add additional information to each of your sentences. This will help you to join your ideas together, make them flow really well, and make your answers cohesive. You'll also need to make sure that your answers are cohesive. So you want to use things like organisational markers, otherwise known as connectives, or conjunctives like and, but, or so, to link your sentences together and join up ideas so that they flow. So in this answer, sentences all flow on from one another and they are linked together. So in the first paragraph, we've got the purpose for writing, and they've mentioned the selfless work that Jasmine has done for the community. And then we get some more details in the second sentence to expand on this selfless work. So she's a volunteer at an animal shelter, and we've got this connective phrase as well as to connect some further information to this. So she's also participated in a charity bike ride. That's some more selfless work that she has done, and raised some money to support a charity. In the next paragraph, we've also got sentences that flow on from each other. So she's well known among the vulnerable in the community because she's a community health nurse. And then the next sentence follows on from this to explain that she is kind and considerate to her patients. So she's a nurse and she is being kind to these patients in this role as a nurse. So make sure that in each paragraph you're only talking about one thing. Each paragraph should just focus on one aspect of the topic. And all of the sentences in the same paragraph should flow on from each other to achieve cohesion. Using connective words and punctuation to make sentences slightly more complicated can really help with this. So we've got that as well as, and then we have some more connectives such as due to give a bit of an explanation. And we've got and used throughout to add some more information, to add more detail. And then we have despite, which links to, which it sort of provides a contrast. So she's only 20 years old, but she's made a big impact on the community. So try your best to use a range of connective words to make your sentences more complicated and to make sure that you're joining up your ideas so that they flow. You'll also need to make your paragraphs follow on in a logical order. So in this answer, we have a very logical order. We've got an introduction to the email and an explanation of the things that Jasmine does outside of work to help the community. Then we've got a little bit of detail about her work life. And then finally, we are further explaining the impact that she makes on the community and trying to persuade the reader that she is a really top nominee. Next, let's think about the language and register that has been used in the answer. So whenever you're writing, you need to make sure that you have the right kind of tone and style to match up with the audience and purpose. So let's remind ourselves of the audience and purpose in this question. We have been told that the purpose is to nominate someone for an award. So we want to be persuasive when we're doing this. We're trying to convince the reader that this person should be rewarded for their contributions. So that's our purpose, and the audience is the Community Awards Committee. So that's a professional group of people, so we're going to want to remain quite formal throughout. So how is that reflected in the answer? Well, it's suited to the purpose because it satisfies all the different parts of the question, and the focus is on persuading readers that Jasmine is a suitable nominee for the award. It's also suited to the audience of the Community Awards Committee because we don't know the names of the people that we're writing for, but we have correctly addressed it to the awards committee, and we have tailored our answer saying, I hope that you, members of the committee, will consider Jasmine for this award. So make sure that you are matching up to the audience and purpose. We know that this is quite a formal answer because we're writing to these professionals. So we've got no slang used throughout the answer, and all of it's written in standard English. We also don't have any contractions such as don't, won't, can't, and we would use cannot, will not, that kind of thing instead. The answer is trying to persuade the reader, so we have persuasive techniques that have been used here. So for example, we've got highest. Now that shows that her achievements are impressive and important. She is doing the very best out of everybody. And we've got some positive language throughout the answer as well. So we're told that she is more than deserving and she makes people smile and she adds so much value to people's lives. So we're using these positive adjectives to really persuade the reader that Jasmine deserves this award. So when you're writing your own answers, try your best to identify the audience and purpose in the question and think about whether the question is prompting you to write persuasively or to write informatively, or whether there's any other underlying purpose that you should be writing for. You should also use complicated sentences in your answers with multiple ideas contained within them. So a good example of this is Jasmine has contributed the highest number of volunteering hours of any volunteer at the Beasts and Animal Shelter, as well as participating in a charity bike ride and raising over £650 to support Saving the Angels, a children's cancer charity based in London. So this is quite a long sentence, and it's been broken up with commas and connective words like as well as, and we've got various things that are being communicated within this sentence. So we've been told that she's a volunteer at the animal shelter, and not only that, but she's contributed the highest number of hours. And then she's also done this charity bike ride, and so we've got another connective there, and she's raised over £650. And then we've got details about the charity that she's raised this money for. So all of this information has been linked together really effectively within the same sentence. Using longer and more complex sentences will show the examiner that you can connect your ideas together and make connections between multiple ideas and pieces of information. So try to include longer and shorter sentences within your answers to get a good variety of sentence structures. Overall, this answer is really good because it has effectively addressed all of the points in the question. It's written appropriately for the audience and purpose that has been specified, and the language is persuasive. The answer all makes sense and flows really effectively because it's been well divided into a logical order and broken up using paragraphs. The formatting in the answer is correct for an email, and spelling and grammar is accurate throughout the answer. We've also got a range of punctuation that has been used correctly. So now have a go at writing your own email, and then have a look at the marking criteria to see if you've ticked all the boxes. Now let's move on and take a look at the second task. Task 2. You recently trained for and took part in a sponsored event for your favourite charity. You were grateful for the support you received from your peers and work colleagues that enabled you to donate a sum of money to the charity. Write an article for your college or workplace newsletter about the experience. In your article, you could explain why you're writing, explain why you chose that particular charity, describe how you prepared for the sponsored event, describe what happened on the day of the event, and thank people for their sponsorship. You should include any other details that you think might be relevant. So let's start by identifying the text type that we've been asked to write. And we have been asked to write an article. The audience for our article is either college students or people from our workplace, because we are writing for a workplace or college newsletter. And the purpose is to explain this sponsored event that we have done. So we have to explain our reasons for writing, we have to say that we've done this sponsored event, we have to explain why we chose a particular charity, so identify a charity and explain the work that it does, why you support it. Then describe how you prepared for it. So if it was a sponsored silence, for example, you might say that you prepared by practicing being silent for sort of long periods of time. And then describe what happened on the day of the event. So explain in detail what you did and what the results of the event were. Did it go well or did it go badly? And then finally, we are to thank people for their sponsorship. So let's take a look at a model answer for this question. Waltzing for Wildlife, my fundraising experience. Last week I danced for 10 consecutive hours to raise money for Kingbirds, a wildlife charity that protects endangered birds in the Amazon. I want to thank everyone who donated and to give special thanks to Ophelia and Jude, who took time out of their busy schedules to bring me food and water and check on my welfare. Why dancing? I find most forms of movement utterly dull and exhausting. Even seeing a runner in the street leaves me out of breath, but dancing is a form of exercise that I can enjoy. Being a couch potato, nobody in the office expected me to succeed. Yet, after several hours of practice, my increasing love of dance came out on top, and I prepared myself for the nerve-wracking 10-hour dance. The workout of a lifetime. On the morning of the dance, I was shaking like a leaf. I had put in the hours at home, but would it be enough? The first few hours went by and I felt okay. My feet didn't hurt and I wasn't too tired just yet. The 8-hour mark was a tricky one. Everything hurt. I mean everything. My neck, my back, my legs and my feet. My poor, poor feet. By the end I was delirious and dancing like a sad penguin, shuffling on my feet with tears in my eyes. Then Ophelia and Jude burst in, beaming. I had done it. Why kingbirds? I adore tropical birds and live with my 2 parrots, Polly and Gizmo. I read about the deforestation that is devastating bird populations in the Amazon, and I simply had to do something to save the poor creatures. I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who donated. So now let's take a look at why this is a good answer. And again, we will start with punctuation. So we've got the correct use of capital letters and full stops throughout the answer. We have a capital letter at the start of each sentence and a full stop at the end of each sentence. Remember that if it's relevant, you can always use things like question marks to end your sentences as well. Commas have been used to add some further detail and to create lists within the answer. So for example, we've got lots of paragraphs in this sentence here. I want to thank everyone who donated. And then we've got a comma to add some additional information. And we've got a connective, we've got and there, to give special thanks to Ophelia and Jude. And then we have another comma to explain, to separate the thanks to Ophelia and Jude from what Ophelia and Jude actually did. So they took time out of their busy schedules to bring me food and water. And then we have another comma and a connective to add further information about what Ophelia and Jude did. So try to use some commas and break up your sentences into different clauses. Add on more information using commas rather than just using really short sentences. We've got a colon at the top that adds further detail to the title. So Waltzing for Wildlife, and then explaining that we're going to talk about a fundraising experience. We've also got question marks that have been used, so why dancing and why kingbirds. This creates sort of a question and answer structure within the text that really shows what each paragraph is going to be about and indicates that they're going to answer these questions. We've also got a hyphen that has been used. So we've got 8-hour, for example, and 10-hour. We've got hyphens used there. And we also have a hyphen in nerve-wracking. So what is the purpose of these hyphens? Well, the hyphens join separate words together. So in nerve-wracking, nerve and racking have separate definitions. They are separate words, but we joined them together to create a single word. We also have an exclamation. So as well as question marks, we've used exclamation marks in the answer. So we've got poor, poor feet, and this adds some emotion and emphasis to the answer. So try to get quite creative with your punctuation and think about how you can use it to create specific effects on the reader. But make sure that you are consistently using capital letters, full stops, commas and apostrophes correctly, because you can lose marks if you are not making sure that your punctuation is accurate. Next, let's consider grammar and spelling. So all of the sentences in this answer are accurate and every single sentence makes sense on its own. We've also got agreements between verbs and nouns. So for example, we've got I find. Now if we were talking about somebody else, it would be he or she finds. So just make sure that your nouns and verbs are matching up in that way. We've also got really great spelling throughout the answer, and we've included some more specialist words and trickier words to spell. So we've got words like consecutive, we've got endangered, and we have special as well. So try your best, if you know how to spell a range of words, to include some longer, more complex words in your answers, but make sure that you are comfortable with spelling the basics. A good method for improving your spelling is the say and cover, write and check method. So you write down the word that you want to learn to spell and say it out loud. You then cover it up and try to write the correct spelling. Then you lift up your hand or whatever you've used to cover the word and you check whether your spelling is correct. Repeating this process will really help you to level up your spelling. So now we've considered spelling, punctuation and grammar, and all of these elements will help you to make sure that all of your writing makes sense and is really clear to the reader. Try reading through your answers before you finish your exam to make sure that your spelling, punctuation and grammar are accurate and everything makes sense in your answers. Now let's move on to the composition. So let's think about length and detail. Have we been given a word count for this question? So yes, we have. We've been told we need to write between 250 and 300 words, and that has been done in this answer. We've also got a range of relevant details that have been included. So we've addressed all of the different bullet points in the question. Now, in this question, you don't have to use all of the bullet points because we are told that we could use these, but we don't necessarily have to. But they can really help us to figure out what kind of details we might want to include. And they're a really good guide to ensure that our writing is consistently relevant and tied to the topic appropriately. So we've explained the reasons for writing, why we chose the charity, how we prepared for the sponsored event, what happened on the day, and we've thanked people for their sponsorship. Let's take a look at how this has been done. So we have explained what we did, dancing for 10 consecutive hours. We've explained the charity that we've raised money for, and we've given some details about why we have chosen this charity. We've also explained why we've chosen the specific type of fundraising that has been done, and we've explained how we prepared. So after several hours of practice, this person was prepared. They've explained what happened on the day, so they've started this paragraph with on the morning of the dance, and they've given some details about how they felt during the experience and how it went. So lots of relevant details that are appropriate for the question have been included here. Remember that to add details, you can either add information or you can explain your ideas with reasons, but make sure that any details that you're adding are closely related to the question, because you might lose marks if they're irrelevant. It's really helpful to plan your answers in advance to make sure that you have enough detailed ideas to write about before you start. Now let's consider how this has been formatted and organised. So remember that when we're looking at formatting, we need to know the text type, and we know that the text type for this question is an article. So what kind of features do we need to include in an article? Well, we need a heading, and we have one here, Waltzing for Wildlife, My Fundraising Experience. A heading gives a brief overview of what the entire article will be about. And then we have subheadings. So why dancing, the workout of a lifetime, and why kingbirds. And the purpose of these subheadings is to divide up parts of the article and show the reader what each part of the article is going to be about. So try to use both headings and subheadings in your own answers. You Could also include the author's name at the bottom, so you could say by Jim, for example. But it's really important that you are focusing on making sure that you've got headings, subheadings, and paragraphs throughout your answers. You could also use some other organisational features to show the examiner that you know how to use different formatting features effectively and organise your writing. So you could use, for example, some bullet points or text boxes to divide up the writing further, but the features that we have here are appropriate for the article format. Now let's consider how cohesive this answer is. So is it well joined together? Does all of it flow in a logical way, and are ideas linked together? So yes, we have sentences that flow on from one another, and all of the sentences in each paragraph focus on one specific topic. So in the second paragraph, for example, we've got all of the sentences focusing on the reasons why this person has chosen dancing and the preparation that they did for the 10-hour dance. And all of the sentences in this paragraph link to one another. So we've got, I find most forms of movement utterly dull and exhausting. So they've given their negative opinion of movement and exercise there. And then they've elaborated on this, saying, even seeing a runner in the street leaves me out of breath. But we've got a connective there to connect another idea onto this sentence and provide a contrast. So seeing a runner on the street leaves me out of breath, but dancing is a form of exercise that I can enjoy. And then we follow on from this sentence to say that being a couch potato, so they've explained that they don't really like moving, they don't really like exercise, so they are a couch potato. So no one in the office expected them to succeed. However, yet we've got that connective word there to provide another contrast. Yet, after several hours of practice, their increasing love of dance came out on top and they prepared themselves for the dance. So we've got lots of connective words that have been used to join ideas up together within the paragraph. We've also got paragraphs that have been ordered really logically. So we've started with an introduction, and then we have an explanation of why they've chosen dance, what the experience was like on the day, and then finally why they wanted to raise some money for the charity. So make sure that you are planning your answers so that your paragraphs can flow on from one another in a logical order, and use connectives and use commas in your answers to make sure that all of your sentences are linking up together. Next, let's address a really important part of the marking criteria. So we'll look at the language and register that's been used, and we will see how it has the right kind of tone and style to match up with the purpose and audience. So the purpose for this question was to write about a sponsored event for your favourite charity, and we've been given some bullet points to further explain what the purpose is. We need to give an explanation of why we chose the charity, and we need to give some descriptions. So when we're describing and explaining, we want to be giving reasons to explain, and when we're describing, we want to be giving details using a range of sort of adjectives and other textual features. So let's take a look at the answer and see how it's suited to the purpose and audience. So we're writing a newsletter article, and it's been focused on the topic and the task throughout the answer. So it describes the charity event and explains why this person chose to do it. It's also really well suited to the audience. So we were writing for either a college or workplace newsletter. So this person has thanked people from the college or workplace who have been giving donations. And we have references to the office. So nobody in the office expected me to succeed. So it's clearly adapted to that workplace audience. The style of the text is relatively informal. So for example, we have couch potato being used as a sort of slang phrase in the second paragraph there, and we've got things like came out on top. So we were using idioms in our answer, and these are quite informal. This creates a more conversational style and quite a light-hearted tone to entertain the reader. We've got questions and exclamations. So for example, I had put the hours in at home, but would it be enough? And my poor, poor feet. And these draw the reader in. So we've got short sentences as well. So for example, we have everything hurt, I mean everything. And we've got repetition of everything as well. And this makes it more entertaining, makes it a little bit more humorous. And we have these exclamation marks to build excitement as well. So it's a thoroughly entertaining piece, and it's very suitable for the office or college newsletter. We've got language and structural techniques that have been used to entertain throughout. And we've also got some alliteration here, so delirious and dancing, for example, so that repetition of that D sound. So try to use some language techniques whenever you're describing in your answers, as this will make it more interesting and entertaining for the reader. Make sure that you're adapting your responses to the audience and the purpose. Focus on the purpose of the text throughout, and think really carefully about the style that you will need to achieve your aims and to match up to your audience. Finally, let's consider whether this answer has some longer, more detailed sentences. So we saw that this sentence here includes a range of different clauses. We've got these clauses separated by commas, and we have lots of different details that have been included and linked together in the same sentence. So we've got, I want to thank everyone who donated. So they've started by thanking everyone, and they're giving special thanks to Ophelia and Jude, and then explaining what these people did. So make sure that you're using a few longer, more complicated sentences within your own answers, because this will show the examiner that you can make connections between multiple ideas and pieces of information. It will also make it more interesting and detailed for the reader. So to summarise, this is a fantastic answer for a number of reasons. The spelling, punctuation and grammar are accurate throughout the answer, and we've got a wide range of punctuation that has been used to satisfy the purpose of the text. The answer addresses the audience and purpose really well, and every single detail is focused on the bullet points that were given in the question. We haven't got any unnecessary details, and we haven't veered off topic in any way. We've got correct formatting for an article, and paragraphs have been used effectively to ensure that the answer flows in a logical order. The entire answer makes sense, and everything is very clear to the reader, and we've used a few language techniques as well to entertain the reader with the description. So now that you've had a look at this answer, have a go at writing your own answer and then check it against the marking criteria. Make sure that you read over your answer when you've finished and check it for any errors, and maybe give it to somebody else as well so they can have a read through and see if everything makes sense.